Okay, hello everyone. Welcome to Chapter 40, and this is on the immune system. Please, before you begin this section, make sure you stop the video and you complete a cover page on page 118 about physiology. It should contain the word physiology as well as three pictures associated with physiology. Okay, so some of you guys don't know what physiology is. Physiology is a study of the body. So basically, what you're going to be drawing is three body parts. Please try to keep them as realistic as possible. So, like a heart, don't make it look heart shaped. Try to make it look like a real heart. You can also use things from the book from chapter 40, 35 on parts of the body is what you want to focus on in that section. So you need at least three pictures this time, and definitely the background will be counted on the next grading. So make sure you put a background on this cover page. So if you are not done at this point with the cover page, make sure you complete a cover page. Make sure you add four colors and the word physiology as well as three pictures associated with physiology. Okay, so right now, chapter 40 is on the immune system. It's section 1, infectious diseases. This video will cover section 1 and section 2. Okay, so your EQ for this, and they are fill-in notes, so go ahead and use the fill-in note paper that you're going to be getting. The EQ for this one is how do people contract infectious diseases? So we're going to go into how it is that you get an infectious disease. Okay, so first we're going to define disease. Disease is any change not caused by injury that disrupts the normal function of the body. So if someone gives you a bruise because they were playing around and you got bruised, that is not an injury. But if that bruise gets infected or you get a cut, the cut is not, let's say, if you accidentally cut yourself with a knife, the knife cut isn't it would not be the injury, but if you get bacteria growing, that would be a disease. You can get that the pathogen that causes this or the bad thing that causes that infection is actually the disease, not the injury itself. Okay, so it disrupts normal body functions, and it's caused by these things that I just called pathogens or environment sickness generators. Some people get really sick with pollen, and that's in the air during spring. Like right now, they get like their body overreacts to the pollen in the air, so they may get the environmental sickness the word pathogen is basically anything that causes sickness in humans or animals. So a pathogen is just basically a bad thing. Like gasoline is pathogenic. It can cause cancer. Like pollen is can be pathogenic to some people because it can cause you to have horrible um, things going on and mucus being produced by your body. And Some of these diseases can be genetically inherited. Examples of these diseases are many of the ones that that you see on the wall that we did with our little pamphlets. Everything from Tay Sachs to Down syndrome to any of those. Some of them may be some inherited. Something like um, cystic fibrosis is something that you can inherit that is basically disease. So those are some examples of those diseases. Pathogens, once again, are bad things that cause sickness. Okay, so pathogens, just what they do is that they cause the disease. They cause you to be sick by destroying cells. Sometimes they release toxins on top of that. And if there's enough of them, they may actually block the flow of blood to places where the blood is needed. And they also consume nutrients or use nutrients that should be for your body. They actually eat them instead of you. So they cause diseases in many ways. And the typical ways that diseases are passed on from person to person are physical contact, direct or indirect. By direct, it's like actually touching someone or having physical contact with someone, or indirect physical contact, which means like you use a straw and then your friend uses a straw. You're basically touching the same surface, and that the pathogens can travel that way. contaminated food and water, food poisoning. So you may have a pathogen that's actually in the food that you're eating. That's called typical way is food poisoning. Or infected animals, mosquitoes spread malaria, as well as like the Zika virus also is spread through infected animals. Rabies is another example, spread by animals. They're not always mosquitoes. So mosquitoes are like common. That's why they typically do that. But other ones are bigger. Rats also are ways that things get pathogens can get passed on from one individual to the next. Okay. Why do you feel sick when you have an infection? Well, the symptoms caused by your body's response to the infection. So your body's trying to get rid of it. So what it does is that it does certain things that help kill this evil invader that has gotten into your body. So fever, the use of fever. Fever, your body gets really warm in order to try to kill the pathogens. Many pathogens or the bad guys are like die in high temperatures, so you can boil them. So if your body gets to that boiling temperature very hot, they can actually die. So that's why sometimes you get fevers. Vomiting, vomiting physically, runny noses, and coughing. You're basically trying to get rid of that pathogen that has gotten inside of you. So you're physically trying to get it out of you. So you're vomiting or you have a runny nose and it's trying to come, your body's trying to get it out through the mucus, or you're coughing, you're physically trying to get it out of you from the lungs. Um, and you feel tired because your body works very hard to fight this infection. It does not want to have this pathogen inside of it because it's consuming it or destroying cells or anything or producing toxins that are going to kill you. So your body's fighting really hard to get rid of it. So that's what a lot of your energy is going to the war and goes away from like you running and talking and feeling good. Okay, so these are some of the pathogens that I'm going to talk about here. There's viruses, and the way viruses, the there's viruses, bacteria, protists, and worms. Those are the most common pathogens that we find in humans. And how they work. The viruses attaches to the cell itself and injects its genetic material into your cells. So in fact, it changes your cells. Examples of these are flu, cold, smallpox, and AIDS. Bacteria, most are harmless, but and they break down tissues and release toxins. So the ones that are really bad will actually eat at your tissue and release toxins as they're eating you up from the inside out. And examples of this are strep throat, tuberculosis, and food poisoning. So like food poisoning is basically bacteria called E. coli. That's the most common one for food poisoning. It's E. coli. E. coli is a bacteria that can live in your intestines, and basically when it overproduces, or it gets into parts where it shouldn't, it actually causes you to get sick and you basically yeah, you can die from E. coli poisoning, and it's a typical bacteria that lives in your intestines. But when it just goes crazy in there, or you get too much of it, it can actually kill you. Protists. Protists feed nutrients in host blood. So basically, you get little protists are single-celled animals. They're actually little microscopic animals that can get into your circulatory system, and they basically start sucking you dry, getting all of the nutrients that should be going around your body. So that they basically feed off of you. These little tiny one-celled animals. Malaria. That's in Africa, parts of Africa, where it's carried by mosquitoes and malaria, sleeping sickness. These are basically by little single-celled organisms called protists. They're basically one-celled animals that are found in dirty water, and they get into people. They're also found in mosquitoes, the ones that are malaria, and these get into your body and basically just start. Your blood is like the water that they live in, so basically they just start reproducing like crazy and kill you from the inside out. Finally, worms. Worms penetrate the skin and disrupts the whole system. It's the whole reason why we wear shoes. Um, because many of these worms were getting in through the between your toes, so with people when they weren't wearing shoes. So those worms, these are also the same kind of worms that are like in your dogs. The when you don't you have to deworm your dogs. These basically can get in through your skin. They make little holes in your skin and basically just start living inside of you. And they can kill you because many of them lay eggs that get into your brain and then stop the blood from getting to your brain, and that kills you. So scary stuff. So bacteria, Bacteria are single-celled living organisms. They are prokaryotes because prokaryotes have no nucleus. So they're single cells that have no nucleus. They're asexual reproduction, so they just divide by just breaking apart, and they multiply by themselves. They're smaller than a human cell, but can easily be seen with a microscope. They live in warm, moist environments such as your underarms and areas like that that are warm and moist, or your circulatory system, your blood is warm and moist. So they would love to live inside of you because you're warm and moist and you're a perfect place for them to replicate. That's also why they live in your teeth and they eat away your teeth enamel and you get cavities. So, yeah, bacteria, bad. Okay, most bacteria, I should say, are harmless. You have a ton of it on your surface, on your skin. You have a ton of bacteria. You have a ton of bacteria that are just in your digestive system to help you digest food. They're very, very good helpers, but there's a few of them that give bacteria a really bad name. Let's go through those. Um, there is many, not a whole lot, but quite a list of some that break down tissue and produce toxins, which basically can kill you. Examples are E. coli that can be found in food, strep throat that causes strep throat, diphtheria, botulism, and anthrax. Those can kill you because these are bacteria that basically just either most these either are they basically eat your tissue, so they eat you away from the inside out, or they produce as they're eating you, they produce so much like uh, bad stuff that it kills you. That stuff that they produce when as they're eating you also kills you. So they work in two different ways. And this is going back to previous chapters that we've covered. These are some examples of bacteria. What we use to fight bacteria, antibiotics are basically chemicals that we've gotten from other things out there in nature, chemicals that we've been able to get from them. And some of them are able to kill bacteria. Many plants have produced chemicals that help kill bacteria. So we basically take those plants, kill those plants, take all that chemical and use it ourselves. So and we call them antibiotics. They kill bacteria, but not body cells. So they only kill bacterial cells, not body cells. The way they do that is they interfere with the cellular processes of bacteria. So they are able to when the bacteria are trying to build little walls, they 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 can't build good walls, so they die. Okay, and we have bacteria antibiotics that kill many different types of bacteria. Two examples are penicillin and amoxicillin. So we have a lot of those. A side note about this: bacteria are starting to well, have always mutated very easily. We now have several bacterial infections that we cannot stop with antibiotics because when they get inside of you. And it's really sad now that we're starting to see deaths of people because we don't have once someone gets these bacteria, we can't stop the bacteria anymore because they've mutated in such a way that the antibiotic doesn't work anymore. So we're now seeing the breakdown of our use of antibiotics because many of the bacteria we have now there's newer mutated bacteria that comes from the old one. And this new one now doesn't die in penicillin, doesn't die in amoxicillin, doesn't die in tetracycline. So we now have certain types of bacteria that once it gets inside of the body, it's impossible to kill and it winds up killing the individual. Oh, by the way, in the previous slide, I talked about some bacteria that has become like immune to antibiotics. We call that antibiotic resistant bacteria. Okay, viruses. Well, viruses cannot live or reproduce on their own. They must invade host cells. They contain RNA or DNA, but none of the equipment to reproduce. They mutate super fast, and they're about 1,000 times smaller than bacteria. We cannot see these with a microscope. Here we've got the lytic cycle. So basically, we have that little bacteria, that virus attaching to the cell, and then poops out the little DNA, and the DNA goes into the cell and copies itself or replicates itself. And then after that, it basically makes more stuff to create more little viruses. Then the cell dies and explodes, and all these little copies of a virus come out from just one virus infecting one cell. And then all of those little viruses go off and infect more cells. This is what viruses do. Examples of these pathogens are the common cold, influenza, smallpox, warts, and HIV. These viruses are very, very, impossible to stop them. We really don't have a whole lot to stop them other than getting your body used to it. And the only thing that stops viruses are your own immune system. We don't have medicine to stop it. We are really trying to create some, and we have some experimental one that's kind of slows it down, but stopping a virus, so far we found it very. Hopefully, in the next few years, we'll be able to do it. But right now, we still don't have of stopping many viruses. Even the HIV virus, when people get it, now we have like AZT that's able to slow it down, but getting rid of it, we haven't been able to because viruses live inside of cells, and if there's even one virus in your system, it means it's still there. And when you get weak, it's going to come out and create problems. All the pictures you're seeing there that are really hard to look at, that's smallpox. Okay, so hopefully you remember this from first semester, where we kind of made one of these. But basically, viruses are very simple. They're protein and DNA or RNA, and they just inject their DNA into cells and get the cells to do what they want. So that's what makes them so hard to kill, because they're living inside of your cells. You'd have to kill your own cells to be able to destroy them. So what your body does, and we're going to talk more about this next section, is a couple of sections from now, is your immune system and what it does to actually fight viruses off, because that's the only thing we have to stop the virus invasion. The best treatment for viral infections, though, right, is so because your own immune system has to be able to fight that's the only thing that we have. That's the only real, we don't have medicine. It's just your own immune system has to fight it. So the only way of fighting viruses is getting plenty of rest, plenty of water. You're not going to get medicine from a doctor. You just have to lay down. That was a bell. And lay down and basically allow your own body to heal. And antibiotics versus antiseptics. Antibiotics treat bacterial infections, and I talked about those before. Ampicillin, penicillin, tetracycline are examples, but not viral infections. You cannot use anything on viral infections. Do not interfere with the host. So basically, antibiotics don't mess up um, your own cells. They just kind of kill the bad guys and leave your cells alone. Antiseptics are applied to the skin to reduce possibility of infection. Example, alcohol, iodine. It's also used in decontaminating surfaces such as countertops. So like Clorox wipes, bleach is an antiseptic. Um, uh, l- um, um, Alcohol is an antiseptic. Like iodine, you can also kill the things on the surface. Antiseptics are basically to clean a section off. So like those, what is it, alcohol wipes that you use before they like give you a shot or something, those would be sterilizing. They basically kill all the bad things that are there. Another one that's maybe a little more common to us is Neosporin. Neosporin is an antiseptic. It basically when you get a cut, oh, you put a little bit of Neosporin. It basically kills all the bad things that could possibly be on the surface of your skin that may try to invade. Well, it kills them all off so they don't get into the cut, and this cut stays clean, less likely to get infected. And like I said before, antibiotic resistance is terrible. We do have more and more people that have tuberculosis in the world, because now the medicine that we used to be able to use for it, the antibiotic that used to kill the tuberculosis bacteria, now we have a type of tuberculosis that cannot be killed with antibiotics. What we can do now is make sure that we use antibiotics as prescribed. And that's basically, it's kind of like showing your cards in a game. You do not want to, the way we've noticed that viruses or bacteria, I'm sorry, are mutating so fast because they're being not used right. So let's say you have an infection and you take antibiotics. Let's say you only take 3 days instead of 6 days of antibiotics. Well, even if you have one of those bacteria around that lives, it might get used to your antibiotic. And we've seen this happen so much over the last 20 years, where we're getting more and more bacteria that have mutated in a way that they've become resistant and no longer die in certain types of antibiotics. So it's becoming very dangerous. Okay, the immune system, section 2. How does your body defend against these evil invaders? Pathogens. Okay, what does being immune mean? Why are we not sick all the time? Well, it's because we have an immune system. The immunity is the process in which the immune system fights infection through the production of cells. So we produce cells that help fight, basically warrior cells. Okay, so we have a variety of mechanisms to fight or combat diseases. We have nonspecific immune or protections. The first layer of defense would be our skin. It's a physical barrier, keeps the pathogens out. And the second layer of defense is the inflammatory response. Is if something's able to get through the first layer of defense or your skin, then we get basically inflammatory or swelling that is activated. So if something's able to get through the first barrier, which is your skin, then swelling starts or inflammation. So you get swelling or inflammation in a part where something's gotten in that shouldn't be in there. Okay, so your skin prevents the passage of pathogens, and cuts reduce the skin's ability to act as a barrier, so it weakens your first line of defense. Inflammatory response, that's swelling, produces basically what do you saw? You produce white blood cells that increases the temperature and fever. So basically, you also this also comes. So inflammatory response is two pronged or a two pronged attack. Basically, number one, white blood cells go into the area to help fight the bad guy. Two, your body starts getting warmer to try to kill the bad guys or the pathogens, and your tissues become swollen, and all it feels hot. Pimples. This is not in your notes, but bacteria pass the first line of defense of your skin, and your body's trying to fight it, fight that bacterial infection. So we get really bad things, and we do have antibiotics for this now, but it's very sometimes hard to fight some of these pathogens that are trying to get in. So your body's becoming all swollen, and it's very localized for where the bacteria is coming in. Okay, so right here you do see you do see your skin, and here is a little you've been stabbed by this little tiny thing here, this needle, and bacteria is on the little tip of the needle. So the bacteria gets through the first line of defense. This is what happens. You see the white blood cells coming in through there. The white blood cells are coming in, and what are they doing? They basically act like little Pac-Men to eat the pathogens, the bacteria that got in. So they're coming in, they're sneaking through, and your capillary, that's where your blood goes. Usually it's about half the size, half as thick. This hose is usually half as thick, but it gets wider when to allow the white blood cells that are bigger to get through. So when you want to get blood cells in, the capillaries get really wide. That's why also that's where the swelling comes from. So these little passages get really wide to let a lot of white blood cells in, and those white blood cells go in and fight and eat, devour, and they take all the bad guys away. And so you are no longer infected. But this is where the swelling comes in because the capillaries have to get really wide. Okay, so one of those pathogens got away. Let's say it got into your circulatory system. One of the bacteria did not die. Yeah, after the skin got broken through, swelling started, a fever started, but still, one of those pathogens got through and it's living inside of you. So what to do then? Then you start specific immunity. Antibodies are produced to attack the pathogen. So your body will create little tools to capture all the bad guys that may have gotten away. So antigens are the things that are foreign to the body. So an antigen is a piece of the bad guy. Antibodies um, are proteins that your body makes to capture the antigens. And antibodies basically are to oppose and attack antigens. So your body will create antibodies to capture the antigens. An antigen is a piece of the bad guy. So antibodies, you can think of them as handcuffs. Antigens are the wrists of the bad guy. That's basically what you can think of antibodies and antigens. So your body makes antibodies to capture the antigens. That's the way it works. And right here, the green thing that looks like a big Y has little capturing devices at the end for to bind to the antigen and capture the bad guy. So these would be round and they capture the little balls, and the little circles are basically the bad guys. So this is kind of an example of how the whole antibody antigen works. Okay. Uh, and basically what happens, and this is kind of something we discovered that was very interesting. The first time you get sick, and right here in the graph, you see first exposure. That means the first time you came into contact with that pathogen. The line that goes up tells you how many bad guys you have inside of you, how many antibodies you've made. So these are the things that your body makes to kill the bad guy. So, and within the first day or so of being exposed to the bad guy, your body makes like a little bit of antibodies, and the antibodies capture the bad guy, and then you get feel better. Interval between exposures. So like you start feeling better right here in the flat line at the bottom. You no longer have a lot of these bad guys, these pathogens. You don't have a lot of them anymore. But then let's say somebody, your friend got sick too, and then it became exposed to the same bad guy again, and same pathogen infects you again or tries to get inside of you again. Well, look at how many antibodies your body makes right away. It doesn't wait. Now your body knows and recognizes this bad guy. So your body's able to produce a large amount of antibodies in a really short period of time that help capture every single bad guy living inside of your body really fast. So pathogens get caught really fast and you don't feel as sick. So this if you think back any time in your life where you thought you were starting to feel sick again and you're like, "Oh darn, I'm catching that again." And then all of a sudden you get better, well, this is why. You've met up with this bad guy before and your body knew how to take care of it. So you started feeling sick, but then you just got better. This is why. Okay, this gets to why we have to take vaccines. So after getting chickenpox, a person carries millions of immune cells or antibodies, or cells that are able to make antibodies that recognize the chickenpox virus. So, are you likely to get chickenpox again? If your answer is no, that's because you understand that your immune system is remembering how to capture the bad guys now. And now that it had it already, it will remember and basically create really a lot of antibodies to fight the disease, and you'll never have to have it again. So, acquired immunity, active immunity, injected vaccine, weakened form of an antigen. So, what we've done is gone, oh, well, when you get sick, the second time you don't get as sick. Well, what we've done is gone, great. Well, we can get these bad guys that infect people all the time. And that would be the chicken pox. That would be diphtheria. That would be all of the stuff that you get vaccines for, all those injections you get when you go get vaccines. So you basically go get your vaccines, and what they're giving you is that they get a whole bunch of the bad guys, the pathogens like chickenpox, but dead chickenpox that they boiled in water. They boiled this virus in chickenpox, and then they get this serum of dead chickenpox virus, and then they inject you with dead chickenpox virus. Does that make sense? And so then you get dead chickenpox virus inside of you because they put it inside of you. And what your body does is that it tries to attack it because it's a bad guy. So it tries to attack it. It makes all of these cells and antibodies to attack, but this virus is dead. So it's really not trying to infect you, but your body treats it like something that's trying to invade you. So um, your body will know how to attack it. Now, if you come into contact with the real chickenpox virus, for instance, you're not going to get it because you may start feeling sick a little bit, but then you're going to get better and it's never going to turn into the chicken pox because your body now knows how to fight it before it can actually do the damage. So that's the whole thing. And every single one of us, whenever you go to the doctor within those first 10 years of life here in the US, we get smallpox. With that, because that's why we don't see smallpox in the US, because all of us, ever since they figured out that, have been getting injections of dead smallpox virus. And we never get see those people with a whole bunch of little things all over their faces because we as little kids got the smallpox vaccine or dead virus of the smallpox. And when if we've ever come into contact with smallpox, we will start feeling sick a little bit. We may get one or two, but it's never going to turn into a full-fledged infection because our body knows what it is and it will take care of it much faster. Passive immunity. Passive immunity are basically injected antibodies produced by other animals against pathogens and only lasts a short time. So basically, let's say if someone got like and this was tried during the Ebola outbreaks. We don't know how to stop Ebola. And this is a virus that just basically liquefies your organs within 5 days. I mean, you die a horrible death. And passive immunity is basically what they tried in the last efforts to try to save some people is that they injected some of the blood of someone that got better from Ebola and gave it to someone that had Ebola to try to save them. And it actually worked, but it only lasted a short time. And we don't know exactly how to do that. It only worked once. It doesn't work consistently, but basically it's thought that maybe someone that's sick knows how to make the antibodies and they put the antibodies from one person into the other person. That's one way to do it. Another way of getting that passive immunity is breastfeeding. We do know that when a mother is breastfeeding her little baby, that the baby is actually getting the same immunities from the antibodies in the milk, in breast milk. So babies get a lot of immunities from breast milk. So it's really good to breastfeed. Okay, so active immunity is when your body makes its own antibodies to basically collect pathogens and prevent them from doing any damage. Once the antibodies are present, you will not get sick from that pathogen again, which is also called a permanent immunity because as long as you're alive, your body's gonna remember how to make the bad guys. Sometimes we've noticed that some of the cells forget how to do these. So you'll get like a booster shot to kind of remind your body, oh, this is what the bad guy looks like. Please remember it. So that's why some of you guys get booster shots. Okay. So active immunity, the two ways of getting it is you get sick, and your body learns how to make it. And the second time you won't get sick at all or get a little bit sick. So that's number one way of getting it, getting immunity. The other way is by getting vaccines. You purposely get injections of a weakened pathogen into your body, and that doesn't make you sick, but your body thinks that it's getting invaded, so it remembers what the bad guy looks like. So either way, you get the same thing, immunity, but the other like vaccines are actually easier to get. So if you could either get smallpox and you live through it, hopefully, if you don't die, and then when you get smallpox again, you won't actually you're now immune to smallpox. Or you can just get the vaccine for smallpox, never get sick, and then but your body thinks it was, so it remembers how to protect you. So now you don't get sick from smallpox ever. You're immune to smallpox. You can go either way. Most people prefer vaccines, but sometimes like the cold, there's so many different ones. We don't know how like there's so many different viruses and flu viruses out there that we try to give people the right one, but sometimes there's so many different ones out there that we don't get the right one. And vaccination. And you may have remembered that you got a shot from your doctor. Okay, so vaccinations are weakened or killed pathogens that are responsible for the infection. So I talked about smallpox and chickenpox. It does not cause the disease, but it does get your body to produce antibodies. It stimulates your body to produce the antibodies that will capture the bad guys if they ever do come into your life. Passive immunity is when the immunity comes from somebody else. So either you get antibodies from somebody else, and one prime example of that is breastfeeding. It provides very temporary immunity because your body will eventually destroy those antibodies that you got from someone, and then you're left with nothing. In review, two types of acquired immunity. There's active, your body makes the antibodies, you get sick, or you can get vaccinations and then you get permanent immunity either way. Passive immunity, someone or something gives you the antibodies and it's very temporary. Your body will just eventually destroy it and you won't have the immunity. So many times we seek active immunity. Passive immunity, not really. Okay, please make sure you draw the Venn diagram and create a Venn diagram comparing and contrasting acquired immunity, the two types of acquired immunity. Okay, so in review, infectious disease is a disease that can be passed from person to person. A pathogen is the disease causing agent, aka the bad guy. Bacteria is a single-celled living organism killed by antibiotics. A virus is a tiny particle that needs host cells in order to replicate, and antibiotics do not work on them. Okay, these are the last of the notes for today. Make sure you annotate your paper. You are not going to have a pay of Cornell to Cornell these out, but you do have to make sure that you've got every part filled in of this paper and have it ready to be turned in by the end of the period. Then collect the next sheet of the worksheet to complete and draw out the complete the non-specific defense worksheet. Make sure you draw in the skin, mucus, tears and saliva, sweat, and inflammatory response. And you're going to draw, color, and label and explain how each of the non-specific defenses listed here work. How do they keep you safe? So the list of non-specific defenses we're drawing, you have to draw in those things, color them in, and then label each one and how they actually work to protect you. And that will be it. And then there's another worksheet you're going to be getting. Okay? Hope you guys had fun. I'll see you later. Bye.